Hi, everybody. Welcome to my show. Today, we're talking about Agile in different applications. And my guest today is Shai. Hi, Shai.
Hey, Kira.
So let me talk to you about what you do and how you help people. So let's dive into it straight away. What main challenges do you help organizations to solve with your Agile practice? You're an Agile coach, right?
Yeah. So we're a set of Agile coaches that basically deal with the same problem regardless of who we're talking to. It tends to be, here's the interesting thing with agility. First, people either find us because we're Agile coaches, or they find us because we're talking about three problems. The problems we talk about are project delays or campaign delays, if we're talking to marketing people, budget overruns, or process inefficiencies. That's usually
gosh.
Like people love to come to us with those problems, right? The problem, of course, with that is, say I'm talking to a project manager. If they don't know you, they're not going to tell you that, oh, I have problems with project delays, right? So we have to uncover a bit of stuff that happens, but usually we land at one of those three things.
Wow, that's great to know. That's amazing. Yeah. And then what kind of organizations usually come with those problems? Because I assume from what you said, it's teams.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's usually orgs that, I'll put it a slightly different way. It's usually not startups. I'll put it that way, And the reason for that is because I think if I take the capital A out of Agile and I make it a small a, those smaller organizations are just Agile. They're built that way. And, we've been in smaller orgs. We're founders of smaller orgs. We know anyone who's out there that sort of just makes it happen, you're already thinking in the right way.
Oh,
and
that's
I know
good.
that out there in the Agile world, we talk about, Scrum and Lean and Kanban and all that. At the end of the day, Kira, it's really useless, those frameworks, if you don't have the right mindset. So we talk a lot about that.
When do you talk about that? Like, do people that come to you, they know they need help with Agile, or you kind of need to do some education about that?
Yeah, that's the tough bit. Like I said, most people will come to us and say something like, we have inefficiencies, Shai, and we have to dig deep and sort of figure out what that means. And oftentimes that means we're spending too much, or we have too many delays. I'm hearing more and more, especially since COVID, that we're losing our talented engineers and project people and product people, because I was talking to an engineer with 6 years experience yesterday, and he had 4 offers from brand name companies on the table. 4 offers. Like, can you imagine?
Yeah.
I wish I was an engineer these days, like it's crazy.
It's never too late, huh?
Right. Have to go back. But one of the things that we're talking to heads of engineering, heads of project management these days is, how do we retain talent? That's key for them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
The other thing that they're starting to talk about, but this takes a lot of sort of maturity, is customer satisfaction. And that's really the sort of the thing that we in Agile practice, that's what you're looking for. We don't care that you built 58 functions on your software last year. What we care about is how much is those 58 loved.
Yeah, and that's the hardest part to measure, isn't it?
Absolutely, it's hard. There's a whole discipline on how to measure it, and a lot of what we call product managers these days are getting very good at that. We've got lots of tools that help you with that. And when we start talking about, successful Agile projects, that's really what we're talking about. We want every stakeholder to be delighted with the outcome of that project, and that's tough to do.
Exactly. Yeah. So my question actually was the next one. What is considered, in your opinion, a successful Agile project? And yes, you connected that to how you measure the success. So let's talk about that for a second.
Well, let's get a bit meta. Say we do this podcast, and then we take it to people and we say, hey, look, have a listen to this thing. There's a few minutes of your investment here, but you are now officially one of our stakeholders. In 1 week's time, I'd love some feedback from you, right? And then you'd come back to me and say, Shai, we talked about this, but we skimmed over it. But the feedback is that we should spend more time there. I would say, sweet, Kira, let's do a version 2, and let's do it again, right? Let's get to a place where we delight those stakeholders. It's really very simple. Ask them what they want, deliver them what they want. You know, the problem we've found with technology and sometimes even with marketing campaigns and business for sure is that we think they want something and we build what we think they want, you know. And I'm not saying anyone's silly here. We have really good brains on this side of the world. The problem is the world changes too often. You know, what we think, say, let's take an example, Instagram.
Mhm.
If we thought that the world wanted Instagram and we came up with Instagram today, it would bomb because the world wants TikTok, right? Things have changed. And so sometimes it's really hard to keep ahead of that change. It's always easier to go back to the people that matter the most, your stakeholders, the paying public, whoever that those groups of people are, and just ask them. It's really simple, you know?
Yeah. And then do you help the stakeholders to actually connect what they do with you to the feedback from the customers? Because from marketing standpoint, I know it's great to keep your CEO or your VP marketing, whatever, satisfied.
For
But
sure.
hey, that's not what the customers want at all.
Exactly right. I mean, let me take the example of, I know, we just went through this with my own website. Let's take the example of SEO. So we optimize our site for SEO and we've got it in the first half of the first page. Excellent. That's a really good output mechanism, right? We did the work, we got something done. No one's clicking on my link, Kira. What's going on?
Right? Are people searching for that at all?
Yeah. Okay, the outcome didn't come out the way that we wanted it. Right?
Exactly.
And that's the difference, the output versus the outcome. So when we start talking about a focus on outcome, and that's one of the tenets of a successful project, agile or not, what we are really thinking about is, did we land the thing that we wanted to land? What's our success criteria? Should be the question we ask right at the very start of our project or our campaign. And then we use those questions to then track later on. And generally speaking, if we're talking about, say, tech and marketing does this quite well, right? Because you've got things like ROI calcs, right?
Yeah, say, theoretically, yeah.
You know, we've spent, say, $30,000 on this particular campaign billboards, right? And it has this little widget with a 3D code. Now we can see how many people purchased from using the 3D code, right? Like you have some loop happening. In tech, we don't have that until recently, at least. And so what we're trying to do is sort of mimic some of those ideas, you know?
That's very interesting, like vice versa, because marketing borrowed agile practices for agile marketing. That's the new trend. But what you are saying, actually, agile can borrow measurements from other industries, from other jobs. Sure. That's super interesting.
Yeah, so, it's pretty much anything that works in like groups of activity, you know. So we would, agilists would call it activity, techies would call it projects, marketers would call it campaigns, you know, but they're basically the same thing. I've been talking recently to someone who does video production. She works for the company that made Lord of the Rings. Right? No, these guys call a movie a project, or they call it a production.
Yeah.
So I started talking to her about agile in the movie production space, and she was like, "Wow, this could really work. Let's try this."
Definitely.
It's
I
really
bet.
cool, right? Because big blocks of work that need to move through stages is really good for this sort of agile way of working.
And a lot of dependencies as well, for sure.
Spot on. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great segue to like non-technological agile projects or trainings or coaching, because you've done a bunch, and I was involved into agile implementation in marketing. Right. So that's very interesting, because this agile is expanding from technological world to, I don't know even where, and not always it is effective. So can you tell me about what you know already from your practice, how to apply that to non-technological projects?
Yeah, I mean, this is when we go to agile conferences back in the good old days when we were allowed to go to conferences, there would always be a few people in the corner of the room that were not techies. There weren't many, but there were a few. And over the last decade, those few people are getting more and more and more. You know, a lot of marketing professionals are there, a lot of product people are there. But we're starting to see other kinds of people also pone up. And I can't help myself. I always go to the people that are different, right? So I always end up talking to them. Now, I was talking to one particular one a few years ago, and they had a restaurant.
Restaurant.
And, yeah, a restaurant, right? And I was like, what are you doing here? I bet you just get paid to, go from conference to conference. Turns out she was the head chef. And I had been to that restaurant a million times, actually. And eventually we got to talking and we said, well, why don't we work together? Because they had amazing food. She was lovely. And their staff was like, I don't know how to describe it. Put it this way. Even if I didn't have to pay a tip, they would still act the same way. You know what I mean? Like they really felt like they wanted to be there. And you could see that there was a really good culture happening. And one of the things that I thought was, well, I kept giving feedback on the food. I kept giving feedback on the coffee. There was one person who I would just have to look at and she knew I was ready for another coffee. Like it would just be amazing. And the proprietor I was talking to, she said, well, why don't we do something together? And so we installed Scrum, right? So we took a very prescriptive approach to this because the mindset I thought was already there. So we said, okay, well, what does Scrum do, for example? So Scrum, guys, is a framework of agility. It was born out of tech, but different organizations starting to use it. The key for Scrum is high performance teams that sort of can take work from start to finish. Okay, so that's the two things that you're really looking for. If you think about it, a kitchen full of chefs, that's a high performance team. And they take work from start to finish. So fresh fruits and vegetables come in the door and plates of delicious food go out the door. Yeah. Right? From start to finish. So we started actually working around some of these Scrum concepts. We didn't take a very pen on paper approach to it because obviously it would be weird. But we started doing some interesting things like there would be a daily stand-up where the chefs would talk to each other and start to figure out how do I learn from each other. The front of house would also do a daily stand-up, by the way, and their daily stand-up was in front of the customers that were waiting for the doors to open. So these guys opened at 8 a.m. At 7:45, there was a daily stand-up. When I left working with these guys, they had about 50 to 60 people waiting in line at 7:45. So they would go outside and they would do their stand-up in front of the customers, and the customers would love it. It would be things like, yesterday I dropped 3 glasses. Today I'm only going to try for 2. Like it's that sort of thing that the people were talking
about. Wow, that's entertaining as well. And that's so different. That's actually branding and marketing as well.
Absolutely. Wow. I mean, it really pulled people in. And not to mention, I mean, we hate waiting in line. And they just made it exciting for us. I started waking up early to go and watch the stand-up and line up. Whereas I would usually rock up at 9 a.m. I was now like, no, this is fun. I want to go for the entertainment factor, And what we ended up doing was, so one of the things we do is sprints. Sprints are basically just time boxes and you get to choose how long. So they had 2-week sprints. They would change their menu every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, brand new menu. This is really difficult to do, Kira. Like, this is not easy, right? And I thought it would be dead easy. It's like, how hard can it be? You make eggs this way, you make eggs that way. Big deal, right? No, we had to change the whole distribution network. We started talking to farmers about, hey, in January, from January 6th to January, whatever it would be, 20th, I need this from your farm. Can you get it to me? Yes, we can. Okay. All right. And then you go to the next farmer and say, okay, from the 6th to the 20th, I need this. But from the 20th to the 4th of February, I need this. So all our verticals had to change. But when we got it there, like it was cool. I mean, I'm a geek, right? So I just love the geekiness aspect of it. But the people that were coming were just like, the 5-star ratings went through the roof. The person actually has sold the business now. She did really well for herself. Lots of cool things happened because of it,
That's cool. That's the importance of planning, because you mentioned, there is not enough time, right. Over-wasted money. So you kind of fix it all as a team.
Yeah. And the only reason we did so well is mindset. It really was the mindset that was already there. Hey guys, let's just work together to get stuff done, and it's really off very quickly. As a coach, I walk into a team and go, these guys aren't going to do so well because the mindset's not there, right? So we totally change track. We don't talk about Agile at all. We don't talk about Scrum. We don't talk about anything. We just start talking to people as if they're humans. Oh, that's interesting. And then we start saying, hey, look, these are the sort of things we talk about. Are you still interested in talking to us? And we take it from there.
Yeah. And it looks like then people feel involved, and they do that not because it's called Scrum or that's how the boss said we'll do that, but because they feel involved and contributing, and that's fun.
Absolutely. I mean, it would be silly for me as an Agile coach to not worry about my stakeholders and how happy they are, because what I want to teach them is to worry about their stakeholders and how happy they are. It would just not make sense. So if I wanted to go and help someone, in my case, it's our clients, they need to be happy with our service. Otherwise, we'll back off and you guys do what you do, and then we'll come back later and help you again. It just wouldn't make sense for us to force something that says, stop forcing someone.
Yeah, I think it's like providing services in a different way. And that's why we're talking, I guess, because it's about having fun, achieving your goals.
Right, exactly right. And one of the things I worry about all the time is, are we outcome focused enough? Getting a team to work in an agile way is great, but that's just an output. Our outcomes are really more about their outcomes. Are their customers getting more and more happy? Because if they are, then we won. We did the right thing.
Yeah, and at the restaurant, I bet it's easy to measure.
Oh man, so easy, so easy. Like especially now with the Yelp and Facebook and Google ratings and stuff. Like it was really easy for us to go, here's 2 weeks on a menu. Let's track how well it does. And I remember there was one burger, I can't remember what it was called, but it just did so freaking well that I was like, okay, what we need to do is replicate this burger, right? Every say 3 or 4 sprints, let's bring it back. And the head chef just looked at me and went, no, Shai, we don't do that here. And I was like, wow, see, this is what I'm talking about.
But listen, you just opened my eyes to something in marketing, because we as marketers always say rapidly test.
Yes.
Improve, replicate, and actually Agile in marketing can help us do so. So absolutely. Campaigns are burgers.
Talking about how tech stole some ideas, you guys came up with A/B testing a long time ago when it came to advertising.
Yeah.
We use that in software now. So if you're Facebook's a good example of this. When you log into Facebook, you have a different experience from the person next to you, because you're getting the A side of something and they're getting a B side of something. Right? And they check, they see, hey, Kira stayed around for 6 minutes, but Shai stayed around for 4 minutes. Maybe the B isn't working. Let's go with A. So tech is really taking that idea and starting to implement some of these things as well.
Well, I love all the collaboration between marketing, sales, and tech, and that's improving and growing lately. So I'll continue going that path.
Yeah, for sure. Amazing. That's the nice thing about it, is when you have an organization that sort of starts looking at Agile in different spots, then you can have a conversation and people sort of just understand each other. Whereas right now there's so much miscommunication, especially in a virtual world. There's so much miscommunication, and sometimes I'll just stand there, watch 2 business leaders talking to each other, and know that they're talking about totally different things. But, totally, and they usually agree on something, and they go, okay, great, we'll go away and implement. And they implement, and they come back, and they're 2 different ideas.
Wow, you are so right. You can't believe, you don't know how right you are, because like I always also say that marketers are in unique position in organizations because we are forced to talk to everyone.
Right.
Because like everybody knows to do marketing, so you need to connect between people.
Right. Yeah.
And you refer people in the same organization to each other because they didn't happen to talk. Yes. So again, another thing that's common between marketing and Agile, we need to talk more.
One of the things I talk about a lot is something called shared understanding.
Shared understanding.
Like we talk about that in agility all the time, because we think we understood each other, but we didn't. And there's so many techniques where you can increase the shared understanding, It's like the definition of done and kind of stuff. Exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. It's one of the things that we would always touch on and say, hey, look, do we have a shared understanding? Yes. I have to share there's a cartoon that shows this perfectly. It's basically 2 people or 4 people looking at it, talking to each other, and they have these thought bubbles on top of them. And one's thinking about a square, and the other one's thinking about a circle, and another one's thinking about a triangle, and they're all saying, okay, so we're good, right? We understand each other.
Yeah, it's a shape
totally
at the end of the day.
Right? It's totally different. And they all go and draw different things, and then they come to a whiteboard and they're like, we drew different things, Now, if they were all $1 million budgets, then you've just lost $3 million because of that one conversation.
Oh, totally. Then do you think there are areas of life where Agile will not work? Because when you were talking about these bubbles, I thought about like family and how like misaligned husbands and wives are.
One of the reasons I do what I do, in fact, is because I want to find those places that it doesn't work.
Really?
And I've come across a couple. The easy one, the one that I think most people would know about, is where you don't have things changing. So I was working with the Department of Innovation once.
Wait, it doesn't work. Things are not changing in Department of Innovation.
I know, it was a strange one, very paradoxical. But the Department of Innovation is a government department, and they don't change very often. And they are pinned down by lots of legislation and guidelines that just don't change either. So someone said, one of the stakeholders there said, look, I don't think Agile is going to work here because we can't deliver working software more than once a year. And I thought to myself, well, I don't know if that's true. 6 weeks later, that was very true. Things just never changed. And oftentimes businesses are like that as well. I worked with a small organization that was a monopoly in their niche market. Mm-hmm. And they
don't need to change anything.
They were doing very well for themselves. Right?
Yeah.
Now, if I looked at it if I put my hat on and I said, hey, your processes are so inefficient and you have delays and you spend too much, guys. Those things that might all be true, but their customers love their product. So who cares? Right?
Yeah.
Again, they were asking us to come in and do an Agile transformation. And we, after about, it didn't even take 6 weeks, 6 hours maybe, I said, don't spend money on us. It's not worth it. It's just not worth it. So there's a few areas where you don't want to go Agile. And it's usually to do with this idea that things aren't changing. Agility is about responding to change. Mm-hmm. If there is no change, then you don't have to respond to it. Don't waste your time because it takes a lot. It's easy enough to install something, you just go in and say, okay, we're doing Scrum, do this. But the mindset thing, that takes time and it puts people out. We've got to be worried that change is not easy for people. So if you're going to ask them to change, you better have a really good ROI on the other end of that, and I'm not talking about ROI in terms of return on investment. I'm talking about like return on like emotion, like all the things that people have to go to change. You need to make sure that they're happy at the end of that. And sometimes it's not happening. The other place I found that Agile doesn't work is when there is no pressure in the pipeline. So you might say something like, actually, I'm working with a team at the moment. They're still co-discovering how broken their stuff is. When I first met with them, it was like, Shai, we do fine. Everything's pretty good. For you to even think about coaching or needing coaching or going into a transformation of any kind, forget Agile, you need to start from things aren't great right now.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, if you don't think that things are not great right now, then you have nowhere to go. So continuous improvement has to underpin some of these things. And if you don't think there is anything to improve, don't do it. Costs you a lot of money, puts a lot of your people offside because you're forcing something down their throats that they know because they do it day to day, that it's not going to work. I don't care, who you are, where you come from, how much you spend on this Agile transformation. It's just not worth it. So listen to them. It's a really good idea.
Yeah, I so much agree with you. And I loved what you said, that you can drop clients after like 6 hours or 6 weeks if it doesn't work for them. And you have to have guts to tell that to a client. That's amazing.
The 6-hour one was really painful because it was my first client in Canada. And I was really running out of money, but you got to help people. I truly believe that if your stakeholders are not delighted, then you've done them a disservice. It's just, and look, we started working with them later on. That
of course, that's what I thought.
Eventually, when they go, ready. Okay, well, we're not a monopoly anymore, and we have a competitor in the marketplace, and we have to get feature parity. Okay, guys, now I can help. So it always comes around.
Yeah, it's like an explicit need that someone explicitly states that's when you come into play. And thank you for raising that question. So last question I'll ask. So what does the future hold for Agile and for businesses Like, who should pay attention to that? Small, big, any specific industries? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Agile has the Agile bug, right? It's like a virus, a bit of a virus, has hit big business quite hard in the last decade, maybe decade and a half. So, for example, all the big banks are talking about Agile. We did an Agile transformation with the fourth largest bank in Australia ages ago. From then, it's sort of just like, oh, they're doing it, so we'll do it as well. You know, so that marketplace, that segment has been relatively well received. Yes. There's been some really big disasters, just putting it out there.
Yeah.
It also is the hardest place to achieve organizational change. I mean, we're talking about 60,000 people, right?
Yeah.
And things like metrics based on KPIs, based on sales, based on who knows, right? So we have to break all that sort of stuff down. We're no longer talking about command and control structures. So yes, there's been big business move, and it's been a very much, hey, I want to do it too because they're doing it. I think the next decade or so is going to be the group of organizations below that are thinking about, hey, how do we get to a place that we can be more nimble, right? So I don't want to use the word agile because it's loaded, but nimble is the key here, right? Or agility. They really want to be able to move around in the marketplace and help customers that are small and reach for those customers that are really big. And so that's kind of where I think we'll spend a bit of our time in the coming days, years. The other part of that is I think that it's no longer just tech, although what are the things I'm finding, and one of the things I ask pretty much every time I get in front of a stakeholder that's sort of C-level up is, are we a tech firm? Right? It's a blanket question because people hate that question. They know that without tech, we can't live. It doesn't matter where you are. You could be a chicken farm or you could be Facebook. You're still a tech firm because we all use tech to enable our service. What some savvy organizations are starting to realize is, if I'm a services firm, I should buy software that complements my service and then start transitioning. And that's kind of one of the key areas that I would love to play in, because I am a services firm. I've worked with a lot of them. I have a business degree, so I kind of understand how that works. And they try to apply business ideas to a newly acquired tech, for example. And it doesn't always work, right? So they go out there and they spend hundreds of millions of dollars buying the sexiest product out there because they're an incumbent. And they go, okay, well, our sales force is not going to sell that product. And then they mismanage those teams. And I think that's a really lost opportunity, you know? So that's really where I think it's going to go.
Yeah, that's very interesting because I see the same throughout my own practice. And again, it's a tough one. That's about the mindset.
Yeah.
I also liked what you said about being nimble, because that's about the strategy. So it's interesting how you come to the same conclusions from kind of technological side, but open-minded.
Right.
And I came to the same conclusion from like facilitation point of view.
Yep.
And probably it will merge at some point, and more
absolutely.
businesses and their customers will be happy.
And that's the key. You know, we can scope Agile to just being a machine and say, hey, these are the processes that deliver stuff. And that's okay. Sometimes that's our first step with organizations. But really, the scope of Agile is organization-wide. And when you start thinking about that, you're actually talking about nimbleness in your marketplace. You know, so responding to change is not responding to like someone's asked for a change request on your blah, blah. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about what's happening in the marketplace and how can we achieve a future state that actually plays in that area. You know, so I don't know. That's the part of me that really gets excited, but I'm also super analytical and not creative at all. So when you talk to me about, 2025, I'm like, oh no, this is the hardest question ever.
But that's why I ask it. And listen, you've given what you've told me now. It's a great vision. Not every company, not every service company has the vision and the why you do what you do. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I don't know how right you are, but yeah, okay.
I'm the marketing person. You have the vision.
You're definitely right.
I'm probably right. All righty. Shai, thank you so much. And now it's the time to present yourself and describe what you do and where people can find you, because I bet not only restaurants, but those organizations you described who are there with their mindset would love to get in touch.
Oh, okay. All right. So you guys know what I do. I usually do a lot of talking and I don't say much. You just gone through how many minutes of that right now. The key here really for me is to talk to you guys about what you need to do to get yourself ready for change. Okay. So I'm not sort of saying call me up because you're probably not there yet, but there's a certain amount of internal maturity that our leaders need to have before we even engage with them. And it's questions like, is it okay for me to say, hey, my project's not going so well, right?
Yes.
Very hard, very, very hard in organizational context for us to say something like that. I mean, old school.
Quite impossible.
Right, exactly. And that, it's not because of one individual. It's because there's been a series of people that have decided as a group that you cannot ever say something's wrong. And when one person says it, then they get fired, maybe not fired, but maybe flamed. Right. And so it's that sort of culture goes rampant. So I love to be able to talk to people that have gotten past that and can whisper at least, hey, I think things aren't going so great, and that's really when you start to build some continuous improvement loops in.
Amazing. And where can people find you? What's your company's name?
Oh, yeah. Geez, I'm really well, you could search me up. My name is Shai Shandil. I think if you search Shai, you'll find me on LinkedIn pretty much right at the top, especially if you're in North America. The company name's called Soft Solutions because soft skills, software, so Soft Solutions is where we go. And if you're really interested, you can have a look at a YouTube series called Why Shai Why, which is really where I answer questions about Agile. And usually they're why questions. So it's, a bunch of people have asked me why Shai, and I thought this is perfect. I'm just going to come up with a bunch of videos and talk to you guys about this.
Oh, amazing. You're missing out on the marketing side of your business, I guess.
Yeah,
You're so good.
We need to talk more. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this conversation. My full enjoyment, and we'll chat more. Thank you so much.
It's been amazing. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.